"Help me, he's following me," the waitress murmured to the Mafia boss. His reaction surprised all. The city was a maze of flickering street lamps and narrow alleyways, where shadows moved like restless spirits. A fine mist clung to the cobblestones, curling around the legs of the few late-night wanderers. Among them was Isla, a young waitress with eyes that seemed to see everything yet reveal nothing. Her hands still smelled faintly of bread and coffee from the tavern where she had worked until the late hours. She walked quickly, her shoes making soft taps against the wet stones. Normally, she enjoyed the quiet of the city at night, but tonight there was a strange tension in the air, as if the mist itself was holding its breath. She could not shake the feeling that someone was following her. At first she thought it might be a stray cat or a trick of the fog, but a small, deliberate sound, footsteps echoing hers, told her otherwise. Her heart began to beat faster. The streets were empty, but she could feel eyes on her. A sense of danger settled over her like a cold cloak. She turned a corner, hoping to lose whoever was trailing her, but the footsteps remained. Faster, heavier, deliberate. Isla's mind raced. She had heard the stories, the rumors of the Mafia that controlled the city from the shadows, the tales of the man they called Lucian. He was feared by many, whispered about by all. Some said his presence alone could stop a mob of men. Others said he could bend loyalty and fear like a master painter bending light and shadow. She had never thought she would meet him. Not tonight, not in a moment like this. The alley ended abruptly, a dead end bordered by high brick walls slick with rain. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. The sound of approaching footsteps made her chest tighten. Panic rose like smoke in her lungs, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly. "Help me, he's following me," she murmured, her voice barely audible, as if speaking aloud might summon the danger closer. The answer came not from the shadows behind her, but from the faint, commanding presence at the mouth of the alley. Lucian stepped from the darkness, his coat brushing the wet stones, eyes sharp and alert. Even in the mist, he seemed untouchable, a figure carved from night itself. Everyone who knew Lucian said he was ruthless, cold, and unyielding. But here now, he exuded calm control, as if he were the only man capable of facing whatever haunted this city. The footsteps behind her faltered as though they sensed the force that had arrived. "Who's there?" Lucian's voice was low, measured, but it carried across the alley like a strike of lightning. Isla glanced at him, her breath uneven, and shook her head. "I don't know." He's following me," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her apron to her chest. Lucian's eyes narrowed. He didn't touch her, didn't speak again immediately. He simply stepped forward, moving as if he already knew the rhythm of the danger. The figure in the shadows, her follower, hesitated, then melted back into the fog, leaving only a hint of a torn cloak fluttering in the mist. Lucian stooped and picked it up, turning it slowly in his hands. "This is no ordinary thief," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but heavy with meaning. "Someone is hunting you, and it is no coincidence you came here tonight." Isla's head swiveled toward him. Hunting me?" Her voice cracked. "Why, I'm just a waitress." I don't understand." Lucian studied her for a long moment, his eyes unreadable, before finally replying. "You are more than you believe, and tonight the shadows have decided to make you notice it." He moved past her without waiting for her permission, his coat flaring slightly as he approached the edge of the mist. The alley seemed to shrink in his presence. Every shadow shrank away, every echo hesitated. Isla followed him instinctively, drawn by something in the way he carried himself, calm, controlled, dangerous, yet protective. They reached the end of the alley, where the city opened into the soft hum of a wider street. Lucian paused, listening, then crouched to inspect the torn cloak. It bore a crest, a mark of one of the rival families in the city, known for cunning and cruelty. "They are testing you," Lucian said, "or they are trying to send a message. Either way, it cannot be ignored." Isla shivered. And me, what happens to me if they find me? Her voice trembled, but there was also a spark of defiance. I don't want to be their message. Lucian straightened, towering over her, and his eyes softened slightly, not a smile, but something close. Then stay close, and trust me. The city was quiet again, but Isla could feel the danger lingering. She didn't know why Lucian had chosen to help her, why a man so feared by the streets would care about a single waitress. But in his presence, the fear that had gripped her moments ago became something else, something electrifying, almost like hope tempered with caution. They walked together toward the nightclub he controlled, the streets now eerily empty. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the quiet hum of business conducted in whispered tones. The staff froze at the sight of him, showing the same mix of fear and awe Isla had read about in the stories. Lucian did not notice them. He guided her to a small, hidden room in the back, a safe place he rarely allowed outsiders to enter. "Sit," he instructed, and she obeyed without hesitation. The room smelled faintly of old wood and leather, a scent that spoke of time and secrets. Isla glanced around, feeling the weight of unseen eyes, though no one else was in the room. Why me?" she asked. Lucian's gaze met hers. "Because danger doesn't choose randomly, and because you carry something important whether you realize it or not." The words made her stomach twist. Something important. She had lived her whole life in the city, unnoticed, overlooked, a quiet presence among the hum of daily chaos. To be called important by a man like Lucian was as terrifying as it was thrilling. He handed her a cup of warm tea, a gesture so ordinary it seemed almost unreal in the midst of danger. She sipped it, the warmth spreading through her, a fragile comfort against the fear that still gripped her chest. Outside, the fog thickened. Somewhere beyond the walls of the city, the footsteps returned, soft, deliberate, patient. Isla stiffened. Lucian's expression hardened. "They will come again," he said almost casually, though the tension in his voice suggested otherwise. "And next time it may not be just shadows. They may bring fire or worse. But tonight we wait, and we prepare." Isla felt a strange pull toward him, a mix of fear and admiration, though she barely understood why. He was dangerous, yes, and the Mafia had a reputation that made even the strongest tremble, but he was also the only person who had stepped into the shadows for her. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "I never asked for this, for any of this." Lucian's voice was a low rumble. "None of us ask for the shadows. They find us whether we want them or not, but we choose how to face them." They sat together in silence, listening to the city breathe around them. Isla's mind raced with questions. Who was following her? Why had Lucian chosen to protect her? And most of all, what was the strange, magnetic pull she felt toward a man who was fear and fire wrapped into one? Minutes stretched into hours. The fog outside turned thicker, the streets quieter, as though the city itself held its breath. Then, just as she began to relax slightly, the door at the far end of the room creaked open. Isla froze, but Lucian's hand shot out, gripping her shoulder with a firmness that was protective, commanding. He stood, moving toward the sound, his every motion precise, deliberate. The staff outside the room froze in place, eyes wide as they watched the man feared by the entire city move like a shadow, untouchable, yet unstoppable. A soft scraping sound came from the doorway, a figure, small and cautious, stepping into the room. Isla's breath caught in her throat. The figure paused, and in the dim light she saw a flash of a cloak familiar and torn. Lucian's gaze locked on the figure, unflinching, as if seeing through the shadows themselves. The figure raised a hand, a signal, or perhaps a challenge. Lucian's lips pressed into a thin line, the air thick with tension. "Tonight," he said almost to himself, "someone crosses the line, and they will learn why fear follows me wherever I go." Isla's heart pounded, but amid the fear she felt a strange certainty. The man who had stepped into the shadows for her would not let the darkness take her without a fight. And in that moment, Isla understood the truth she had only glimpsed before. that the city was not just dangerous. It was alive, pulsing with secrets, power, and forces older than any she had known. And somehow, she was now a part of it. The figure at the doorway moved closer, and Lucian's hand tightened around the hilt of a dagger hidden beneath his coat. Isla could only watch, breath shallow, as the first threads of a story far larger than herself began to unravel before her eyes. The night was far from over. The city above slept under a misty sky, but below, the streets were alive with secrets. Lucian led Isla through a hidden door behind the nightclub, a passage that few knew existed. The walls were damp, slick with age, and lined with carved stone that seemed older than the city itself. Faint symbols, faded by time, glimmered in the soft light of the torches Lucian carried. "This way," he whispered, his voice steady, but filled with a weight she could feel in her chest. Isla followed without hesitation, trusting him despite the storm of questions that swirled in her mind. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the muffled sounds of the city above faded. The only noises were their footsteps echoing against the stone, and the faint drip of water from the ceiling. Every shadow seemed to dance and stretch, as if the walls themselves were alive. Isla shivered, not from cold, but from the strange thrill of entering a world she had never imagined. Lucian stopped in a larger chamber, the air thick with dust and mystery. Torches flickered along the walls, revealing shelves of old books, jars of strange herbs, and ancient artifacts. "This is a safe place," Lucian said, his voice low and certain. "Few can follow us here, and fewer still would dare." Isla looked around, awe mixing with fear. I've never seen anything like this," she admitted softly. Her eyes landed on a small, carved statue of a wolf with eyes made of dark stone. There was something almost alive about it, a presence that made her heart skip a beat. Lucian watched her carefully, as if noting every subtle movement. "This city has many layers," he said. "Some are seen, some are hidden, and some exist only in whispers." Her mind raced with questions. "Why me? Why am I important? I'm just a waitress. I don't understand any of this." Lucian's eyes, dark and piercing, held hers. "You are more than you realize. There are forces in this city, old and powerful, that have been waiting for you, and now they have noticed you." Before Isla could respond, a faint sound echoed through the tunnels, soft, deliberate, a shuffle of footsteps that did not belong to either of them. Lucian tensed, moving instinctively toward the sound. "Stay here," he instructed. "Do not move." Isla's heart pounded, but she nodded, her fingers tightening around the edge of her coat. She watched as Lucian disappeared into the shadows, moving like a shadow himself, silent and precise. The soft echo of his steps faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the underground. Minutes passed, each one stretching endlessly. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, and Isla gasped. It was a man, tall and imposing, wearing a cloak torn in several places, the same cloak from the alley. His eyes glinted with something dangerous, but there was also a strange sorrow in them. "Werk," Lucian said, his voice calm but edged with steel. The man tilted his head, studying Lucian with a mixture of respect and resentment. "You protect her," Werk said. "But do you even understand what she carries?" Lucian's eyes narrowed. "I understand enough to know that she is under my protection, and I do not allow threats to follow her into my city." Werk's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. "Protection is not enough. She is connected to the curse, the one your family has carried for centuries. She will either break it or become its victim." Isla's breath caught. Curse. Family. She had only just begun to understand that her life was changing in ways she could not control. Fear and curiosity battled inside her. Lucian stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "Explain yourself, or leave." Werk's gaze shifted to Isla. "She doesn't know it yet," he said, "but she is part of something much larger than both of you. Something older than the city, older than your families. The curse binds her bloodline to yours, and it is awakening." Isla's head spun. I don't understand," she stammered. "What curse? What bloodline?" Lucian's hand brushed against hers, not touching but close enough that she felt the warmth and authority radiating from him. You will, in time. For now, know this. Danger follows you because you are important, and because those who seek to control you are powerful. Verk's eyes darkened. Soon, you will see. The city itself will turn against her if she does not claim her place. Before anyone could speak again, Verk melted back into the shadows, leaving only silence and the faint echo of his footsteps. Isla felt a shiver run down her spine. Lucian turned to her, his expression unreadable. He is dangerous, but he is not your only threat. There are others, and some will come from places you least expect. Isla swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. I don't know if I can handle any of this, she admitted. Lucian's voice softened almost imperceptibly. You already are. You survived the alley. You trusted me enough to follow into the unknown. That is strength, Isla, and strength will be needed. They moved deeper into the tunnels, the torchlight revealing hidden doors and ancient symbols etched into the walls. Lucian led her to a small room, lined with cushions and soft rugs. Rest here, he instructed. I will check the perimeter. You are safe for now. Isla sank onto the cushions, her mind spinning. She had always been careful, unnoticed, living a quiet life serving tables and listening to other people's stories. Now, she was part of a story that was larger, darker, and more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. Hours passed, and the sound of the city above faded further. Isla finally allowed herself to breathe, though the tension in her chest never fully left. She could still feel the pull of the city's shadows, the weight of unknown forces circling her like birds of prey. Lucian returned as the first light of dawn touched the edges of the city. He did not speak immediately. He simply studied her, as if measuring how much she had changed in the hours since they entered the tunnels. You are stronger than you think, he said at last. And you will need that strength. The danger is far from over. But tonight you learned something important. You are not alone. Isla looked up at him, meeting his dark eyes. She felt something stir in her chest, a mixture of fear, trust, and a strange, unexplainable longing. I don't know if I can ever be like you, she admitted. Lucian stepped closer, the torchlight casting long shadows behind him. You do not need to be like me, he said quietly. You need to be yourself. That is the only way to survive what is coming. He paused, then gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. And remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. The day began outside, soft golden light spilling into the city streets, but the tunnels remained dim and mysterious. Isla watched Lucian move among the shadows, realizing that she had only glimpsed the surface of the world he inhabited. Danger, power, and secrets were layered like the city above, and she was now entwined in all of it. She rose and walked to a small window carved into the stone wall. The city looked peaceful from below, unaware of the battles, the curses, and the hidden wars that were quietly unfolding. Her reflection in the glass looked different to her, almost like a new person, a person who had stepped into a story far larger than herself. Suddenly, a whisper of movement made her turn. A faint breeze seemed to carry words she could not quite hear. Choose wisely, the wind seemed to say. Her heart skipped a beat. Lucian was behind her, silent like a shadow that had become flesh. They are watching, he said softly, and they will not stop until they understand what you are. Isla felt a shiver of both fear and exhilaration. She had survived the alley, the shadowed figure, and the mysterious warnings. She had stepped into the tunnels, into a world of power and danger. And now, she realized, she was no longer just a waitress. She was a player in a game older than the city itself, a story that would test her courage, her heart, and her very soul. Lucian extended his hand toward her, a gesture of guidance, of protection, of something deeper that she could not yet name. She took it, the warmth of his palm grounding her, steadying her against the swirling fear and uncertainty. You are ready for what comes next, he said. And for the first time, Isla believed him. The city above was alive with murmurs, but below, the tunnels hummed with quiet tension. Isla followed Lucian through winding corridors, their steps careful and silent. Each torch flickered, casting shadows that seemed to stretch longer than they should, as if the walls themselves were watching. Lucian led her to a chamber larger than any they had entered before. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies from long ago. In the center, a stone pedestal held a book, its leather cover cracked with age, pages yellowed but still sharp with meaning. "This," Lucian said, his fingers brushing the cover with reverence, "contains truths you will need to understand. But reading it is not safe alone. Some knowledge carries a weight that can overwhelm the unprepared." Isla hesitated, fingers hovering over the book. I don't know if I'm ready for that," she admitted. Her voice shook slightly, but her gaze was steady. She felt the weight of the moment, the pull of destiny, the sense that her life had shifted forever. Lucian's eyes softened as he observed her. "You are stronger than you think," he said quietly. "But strength is tested not just by action but by understanding what you face." Before Isla could respond, a sudden noise echoed through the tunnels. A low, deliberate sound, a shuffle of boots against stone. Lucian's body tensed immediately, his every sense alert. "They're coming," he said, his voice low and sharp. "We must be ready." From the shadows, Werk emerged, his cloak still torn but his presence commanding. His gaze fell on Isla, intense and calculating. "You think hiding her helps," he said, his voice smooth yet edged with warning. "The curse is awakening. You cannot protect her from what she carries." Lucian stepped forward, positioning himself between Isla and Werk. "She is under my protection. Whatever this curse is, it will not harm her while I stand." Werk's lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. "Protection is only a temporary shield. The city, the families, even fate itself may not be enough." Isla's heart pounded, but she felt a strange resolve rising within her. "I'm not just someone to protect," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I can face this too. I can help." Lucian's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment the shadowed tunnel seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them and the unspoken connection that had grown between them. There was a tension there, unspoken, a mix of admiration, trust, and something deeper that neither had yet named. Werk's expression darkened. "Courage alone will not save you," he said. "But perhaps it will be interesting to see how far you can go." He melted back into the shadows, leaving the echo of his warning behind. Isla exhaled slowly, the tremor in her body lessening, replaced by a growing sense of determination. "He's going to come back," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Lucian nodded. "Yes, and when he does, we must be ready." He paused, studying her closely. "You have courage, Isla, that is rare. Most would have run or hidden. You face the danger instead." She felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was not just protection he offered. It was acknowledgement, understanding, and perhaps something more. The closeness of him, the way his presence seemed to steady her, made her pulse quicken in ways she did not fully understand. They spent the day preparing the tunnels, reinforcing hidden passages and securing weak entrances. Lucian taught her to move quietly, to sense shifts in the shadows, and to notice the subtle signs of danger. Isla absorbed everything, her mind racing with both fear and fascination. Every skill she learned, every whisper of caution, drew her closer to the man who had become both her protector and her anchor. As night fell, the tunnels took on a darker, more intense life. Shadows seemed to pulse and shift, and the distant city above became a mere memory. Lucian and Isla moved together, a coordinated presence, each step measured and precise. They spoke little, but the air between them was charged with tension, mutual respect, unspoken longing, and the quiet acknowledgement of their growing bond. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared at the far end of the corridor. Werk had returned, not alone this time. Shadows moved behind him, figures cloaked in darkness, silent but menacing. The air grew thick, heavy with anticipation. Lucian placed a hand on Isla's shoulder, steadying her. "Stay close," he whispered. His eyes scanned the room, calculating, sharp. Every muscle in his body seemed to hum with control and readiness. Isla felt a shiver run through her, not from fear alone, but from the intensity of being near him. There was something magnetic about Lucian, a mix of power and presence that made the air between them taut and electric. Verk stepped forward, his voice echoing slightly in the chamber. "You cannot hide forever, Lucian. The curse is stirring. It will awaken and she will be its key." Lucian's jaw tightened. "We will face it together. Whatever comes, she will not stand alone." The shadowed figures advanced, but Lucian moved with fluid precision, guiding Isla to a position of safety while still maintaining control over the approaching threat. The tension was palpable, a delicate balance between danger and trust, fear and courage. Isla realized then that her connection with Lucian was deeper than she had admitted, even to herself. It was not just trust, it was dependence, admiration, and a quiet, unspoken longing. The way he protected her, guided her, and yet treated her as more than just someone to shield, it stirred emotions she could not yet name. The figures paused, sensing the authority and power that radiated from Lucian. He was a storm in human form, calm yet unstoppable. His eyes met Isla's and she felt a strange reassurance. No matter what came next, they would face it together. Then, without warning, one of the cloaked figures lunged. Lucian reacted instantly, intercepting it with skill and precision. The fight was swift, almost like a dance, shadows and movement blending into one. Isla watched, heart racing, as he moved with grace and power, a man perfectly in control of the chaos. When the figures finally retreated, leaving only the echo of their footsteps behind, Isla felt a mixture of awe and relief. Lucian turned to her, expression unreadable but intense. "You did well," he said quietly. "Not everyone can stay calm in moments like that." Isla swallowed, cheeks warm. I just tried to follow you," she admitted. He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the faint warmth of his presence. "You are more capable than you know," he said. "And you are not alone, not now, not ever." Her breath caught. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that made her pulse quicken. Fear, desire, and trust mingled in a way that made her chest tight. She had always lived in shadows, unnoticed, but now, standing here with him, she felt seen in a way that both terrified and thrilled her. The night passed with quiet moments between them. Lucian shared fragments of the city's history, the old curses, and the ancient rivalries that shaped their world. Isla listened, absorbing each word, understanding more about the forces that had silently governed her life, and now demanded her courage. By dawn, Isla felt a strange exhaustion but also clarity. She was part of this world now, intertwined with danger, destiny, and a man whose presence seemed to command the shadows themselves. Lucian watched her as she rested, a faint softness in his eyes. He had seen fear and bravery, hesitation and courage, and he had felt a pull toward her that went beyond protection. But he remained silent, letting her find her own strength, guiding her without overstepping, careful not to crush the fragile trust forming between them. The first rays of sunlight filtered through cracks in the walls above, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny stars. Isla rose, stretching, and felt a determination she had never known. Whatever came next, she would face it, not as a frightened girl in the shadows, but as someone who had survived danger, learned courage, and discovered a connection she could not deny. As they prepared to leave the tunnels, a faint whisper of movement caught their attention. From the far end of the corridor, a shadow detached itself from the wall. Lucian's eyes narrowed, recognizing the figure instantly. Verk had returned, closer than ever. His eyes gleamed with a dangerous certainty, and behind him, the faint outlines of the city's hidden watchers seemed to shift and lean forward. Lucian's hand brushed against Isla's, not a touch, but a signal of reassurance and connection. Stay close, he said, his voice a low rumble that filled the space with authority. Isla nodded, heart pounding, aware that the danger was far from over. And as the shadowed figure moved forward, she realized that the city itself, the curse, and the web of rivalries were all drawing her deeper into a story from which there might be no escape. But she was not afraid, not completely. Because beside her stood Lucian, and for the first time, she believed that even in the darkest shadows, there could be strength, courage, and perhaps a spark of something more. The tunnels beneath the city seemed alive, breathing with the weight of secrets and whispers from centuries past. Isla's footsteps echoed softly against the stone as she followed Lucian. The air was thick, scented with dust, herbs, and the faint trace of the city above. Every shadow seemed to shift and watch, as if aware that tonight something decisive would occur. Verk awaited them at the far end of the chamber, the pale torchlight revealing his intense gaze and the faint glimmer of a cruel smile. Behind him, shapes moved like living shadows, loyal followers, watchers, and perhaps spirits tied to the ancient curse that had haunted the city and Lucian's family for generations. Lucian's presence was commanding. Every step he took seemed to push back the darkness, and yet the tension in the air was palpable. He moved carefully, keeping Isla close. Her pulse quickened, not from fear alone, but from the sheer intensity of standing beside a man so formidable and enigmatic. "You've come far, Isla," Lucian said quietly, his voice a grounding force amidst the swirling danger. "But the moment of truth has arrived. Are you ready?" Isla nodded, swallowing hard. I am. I don't know everything, but I know I'm not running anymore." Her gaze met his steady, and she saw in his eyes both trust and a deeper, unspoken connection, a bond that had grown in the shadows, forged in danger and quiet understanding. Verk stepped forward, the shadows behind him seeming to stretch unnaturally as if the walls themselves were alive. "The curse is awakening," he said. "It will not be denied, and she is the key." Isla felt a strange shiver run through her, a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had been told that she carried a legacy, that her bloodline was tied to something older than the city itself. Now, she could feel it stirring within her, a subtle energy that pulsed like a heartbeat, connecting her to Lucian and to forces beyond her understanding. Lucian placed a hand gently but firmly on her shoulder. "We face it together," he said. "Whatever this curse wants, we will meet it as one." Verk's eyes narrowed. "Bravery alone will not save you," he said. "The curse demands a choice, strength, courage, and sacrifice." The ground beneath them trembled slightly, dust falling from the ceiling. A low, almost musical hum began, growing louder, as if the walls themselves were awakening to the presence of Isla's bloodline. The air shimmered faintly, revealing faint outlines of figures long gone, ancestors of Lucian, spirits tied to the city, and echoes of the past that had watched, waited, and whispered for centuries. Lucian's eyes were steady, but his body was poised, ready for any threat. "Isla," he said, voice calm and certain, "listen to me. The curse tests, but it also recognizes the truth. Stand firm, trust yourself, trust me." Isla drew a deep breath, feeling the energy around her pulse like a living thing. She focused on the warmth of Lucian's hand, the solidity of his presence beside her, and the courage she had cultivated over nights of fear, preparation, and quiet determination. She was no longer a frightened waitress. She was part of something ancient and powerful. Verk moved closer, reaching out as if to seize the energy that now radiated from her. "The curse cannot be contained," he hissed. At that moment, Isla raised her hands instinctively, and a soft glow began to emanate from her. It was subtle, almost like moonlight spilling into the chamber, yet it carried authority. The shadows behind Verk recoiled, wavering as though uncertain how to react. Lucian's eyes widened slightly, admiration and awe flickering across his features. "Yes, feel it," he said. "Let it guide you. Do not fight who you are." Isla felt a surge of power and clarity. The fear that had clung to her for so long melted away, replaced by understanding. The curse was not a weapon to destroy her, it was a part of her, a gift as well as a burden. And she could choose how it would manifest. Verk faltered, his confident stance cracking. He had expected hesitation, weakness, or fear, but Isla faced the awakening of the curse with courage and resolve. The glow around her strengthened, pushing back the shadows and the watchers, illuminating the ancient symbols on the walls in bright, shimmering patterns. Lucian moved closer, placing both hands near hers, not touching but close enough that the warmth of his presence mingled with her own energy. "Together," he whispered, "we can end this." Isla nodded, eyes blazing. She focused on the energy coursing through her, shaping it, guiding it with intent. The shadows that had followed Verk wavered, then retreated, unable to resist the force of her determination and the support of Lucian's presence. Verk's expression turned from shock to frustration. "Impossible," he exclaimed. "This is not how it should unfold." Lucian's gaze was unwavering. "The impossible is always possible when courage, trust, and love guide the heart," he said. Isla felt the glow recede slightly, now under her control. She could sense the threads of the curse unraveling, dissolving into the shadows, as if recognizing her strength and willingness to embrace her destiny rather than be consumed by it. Verk took a step back, finally realizing he had underestimated both her and Lucian. With a final glance, he disappeared into the darkness, leaving only the faint echo of his footsteps behind. Isla exhaled, relief flooding through her, but also a quiet exhilaration. She had faced the awakening curse, had stood her ground, and had survived with Lucian beside her. Lucian's gaze softened as he stepped closer. "You did it," he said, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. "You faced the shadows and stood your ground. Not many could have done what you just did." Isla's lips curved into a small, tentative smile. I didn't do it alone," she said softly, feeling the warmth of his presence enveloping her. "You were with me, every step." Lucian's expression darkened slightly, a shadow of intensity flickering across his features. "I will always be with you, Isla. I will protect you, guide you, and stand beside you. That you should never doubt." The energy around her faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the city above and the soft flicker of the torches in the chamber. The curse had been faced, challenged, and contained, for now. Isla turned to look at Lucian fully, seeing not just the Mafia boss feared by all, but the man who had guided her, trusted her, and drawn out courage she had never known. Her heart stirred with feelings she could not yet name, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that lingered between them like the shadows that still clung to the walls. Lucian extended his hand toward her again, this time in a gesture of partnership, of trust, and of something more profound. Isla took it, feeling the warmth, the strength, and the unspoken promise it carried. "You have changed," he said quietly, voice low and rich. "Not just in courage, but in understanding. You are ready for the challenges ahead, and whatever comes, we face it together." Isla felt a quiet surge of emotion. She had survived fear, danger, and the awakening curse. She had learned her own strength, and in doing so, discovered a bond with a man whose presence was both a shield and a spark. As they emerged from the tunnels, the city above basked in the first light of dawn. The streets looked peaceful, unaware of the trials that had unfolded beneath them, unaware that a hidden power had awakened, and that the lives of two extraordinary people had been forever changed. Lucian led Isla to a balcony overlooking the city, the morning sun reflecting off the rooftops like gold. The world seemed calm, yet Isla knew the city held more secrets, more challenges, and more dangers still. But she no longer felt fear. She glanced at Lucian, her eyes meeting his. "What now?" she asked softly. Lucian's gaze was steady, almost tender. "Now we live, we learn, and we prepare. Because the city has many stories, Isla, and our chapter has only just begun." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Then I want to be part of it," she said. Lucian's expression softened into something rare and human, something almost like relief. "You already are," he said, his voice low but certain. "And you always will be." The wind stirred gently, carrying with it a whisper of distant voices, of secrets long held and of possibilities yet to come. The city was alive, full of danger, power, and history, but it was also full of hope, courage, and new beginnings. Isla and Lucian stood side by side, looking out over the city. The shadows were still there, lingering in corners and alleys, but they no longer seemed threatening. The darkness had been faced, tamed, and transformed. And as the sun rose higher, illuminating rooftops and streets alike, Isla realized that she had stepped into a story larger than herself, but one she would face with courage, strength, and a bond that would not be broken. Together, they were no longer just survivor and protector. They were partners, equals bound by fate, courage, and something deeper that neither could fully name, but both could feel.